Hello and welcome to this year's first edition of the Swans Bigfooty Podcast. My name is Bonds and joining me today is Von.
Hello.
And SR.
Sir Swans.
Oh, Sir Swans, that's right. He has updated his name over the summer.
He's updated his team too.
Yeah.
Jumped on. I've got 2 caps now.
Yeah, he's joined the bandwagon. We will be giving him a bit of crap over that throughout this year's podcasts.
It was always bound to happen. I mean, if you live in Tassie,
Yeah, they do change their mind and they are a little bit confused down there.
Doesn't help that the Hawks are based there either.
No.
I'm just supporting local business.
Now, this week we are coming off a great 21-point win over the GWS Giants, but I think the main talking point out of this game would have to be a certain hottie's performance over the weekend, Issac Heeney. Von, I believe you have some thoughts about this.
Probably the highlight of my podcast so far. Yes, how good is he? I don't know. Obviously, when you read the board and you hear players being talked up by supporters and you've never seen them play, you just think, they're probably just good. They probably aren't going to come along and just be instant top 5 of our best 22. His performance, not only in the GWS game, but all of the games prior to that, is just incredible. His skills, I'm so horny for Heeney. That's it.
Yeah, it certainly helps. He's just incredibly composed with the ball. He doesn't seem to make any errors or panic. He's tough as nails. I mean, I was more worried for the post on the weekend than I was for Heeney. And it just really helps that he's got massive, gigantic biceps and a long, flowing mop of blonde hair that's almost LRT-esque. You just can't help but be mesmerised by him on the field. Sir Swans, what are your thoughts on Heeney?
I'm not sure I can go down the path you're going down with Heeney, but he is a little ripper. I just think if you haven't seen him play at YouTube, the footage of him passing to Franklin against Port, where he picked it up on the half volley, spun around and hit Franklin directly on the tits, lace out. That's what you want as a forward. They got a nice little partnership going there, Heeney and Buddy. I reckon he'll be allowed to borrow his car pretty soon, so watch out. But it's awesome to have him. It's awesome to see the performances, and then it's even more awesome to go on Big Footy afterwards and see how he probably should have been at the Saints or the Pies or the Academy's a load of shit, or everyone having a whinge. So it's a double win for us having Heeney in the team. And can I just say, Mills must be a hell of a player if he's better than Heeney, as reported by many experts. And I can't wait to see him either.
Can I just quickly say, probably my highlight of that GWS match was, I think it was his second goal, and he had a don't argue on, can't really remember who. He had a don't argue on a GWS player. I would remember the name, but let's be honest, no one cares about GWS. Yep. And the don't argue was just, it was just sometimes in moments in games you watch a player, they do something absolutely incredible and it just defines their toughness or their strength or their skills. And, for a third gamer to come along, do a don't argue as well as he did, then slot it for goal from a stoppage was something special.
It's elite composure, really. The rest of the team can be turning it over and losing their collective shit, and he stays strong and keeps composed, and he looks like a 50, 100 game player already.
And his hands are so good in controlling the football, especially when it I don't know, we've got all of these terrible passes. I don't even need to go down how terrible our efficiency is, but he makes every single disposal he receives look like it was intended for him, which is really saying something.
Especially with the delivery he gets from our midfield when playing forward, so it's just, you can't speak highly enough of him.
And how good a mark is he?
In all honesty, I think the point that really took my mind away on the weekend, there was a part in the third quarter where we were kicking it all over the ground and we couldn't basically handle the ball. There was a 3-4 minute part in that third quarter where no player was able to really pick it up off the ground easily. And we kicked a scrummage on the ground and it was bouncing everywhere. And it went straight to Heeney. He got it straight from the half volley and handballed it off perfectly. It seems like he's a player who's had nearly 200 games experience. It's as soon as he starts getting more off the ball, he's almost going to be nearly the best midfielder in our side, and that includes Parker at the moment. He's been...
Let's not get carried away.
Okay,
We're not getting carried away, but I think it's not too early to say at least 4 Brownlow medals and 10 best and fairest are probably going Heeney's way.
only 10?
Skills.
Only 10?
Well, Mills is going to get a few.
Oh, yeah, so fair enough. Forgot about that guy.
Next year when we're moist for Mills, we'll...
In all seriousness, though, what did you guys actually make of the performance on the weekend against the Giants? They are really improving as a team, and
the Giants are like, I don't know, looking at a girl and it's your sister, and you get a slight erection or something. They're just not. I don't care about playing the Giants. They're just a rubbish cola-based franchise. No one cares about.
So now we see his Tasmanian roots coming through. The slight erection for his sister, was it?
I don't know what else to say. Look, Whitfield's a good little player, and Smith looks all right, but I don't know. I felt like we won it by 3/4 time, and we took the foot off the pedal, which is slightly disappointing. But they get fired up to play us more than we do them. I think there's a bit of a lack of respect the other way that they might come with time, but. Just listening to the commentary and them gooing over GWS, you would have thought they'd won the game, but I thought it was a pretty comfortable win. I was impressed with the usual suspects. Hanbury's actually started the year pretty well, especially in comparison to last year. He's come out with a good attitude, which is pleasing. We look a lot better with McVeigh in the team. It was nice to win with what was probably, by his standards, a quiet game from Kennedy. I'm not sure if I'm being harsh there, but I didn't notice him that much. I thought Bird shut the shield down. Jedd's had a couple of good weeks. Buddy's Buddy, he's pretty awesome, and we covered the loss of Smith pretty well in defence. It wasn't a bad little win. I like Rowan's role at the moment too on the forward line. It was a shame Towers wasn't there as well. I didn't think he should be subbed, but what do I know? There was only one player I was disappointed in, and I think I've said that enough on the board, and I'll keep saying it all week, and he'll get picked every week. But yeah, that's it.
Oh, it's interesting, actually. We talk about, and you bring up a valid point, a disappointing game for Josh Kennedy. A disappointing game for Josh Kennedy still includes 9 clearances on the weekend.
It was a solid game, but
and 5 inside 50s.
Even Parker was down a little bit, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'm not one to bag my favourite player in the whole entire universe. He hasn't really been right since his concussion, which I think is fair enough. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if this has always been a part of his game, and I'm only noticing it now. But last week, it was really obvious that he probably tried to do too much. He tried to take on too many tacklers, and there were some times when I thought that, he was probably holding the ball. Did you guys feel that at all, or was that just me?
I did feel that a little bit as on the weekend. It doesn't help. He's only just starting to get used to a tag at the moment. Last year and early this year in round 1, he never really gotten that before. Now he's getting players who are coming to him starting at stoppages and that as well. And
he's not having to push forward as much this year as well so far.
Yeah,
that's my observation. But his disposal's always been pretty average. He's just a bullocking clearance player, really. Exceptional clearance player.
Exceptionally good looking.
He's still 15 disposals, but only on the weekend, which is a bit of a low for him. But he's still got 80% disposal efficiency. That isn't bad. Compared to Kennedy with 24 disposals and only 58%.
Oh, I mean, those guys have been delivering week in, week out. We're talking a slightly average game, and it was just pleasing to win with both of them down a little bit, because normally we probably wouldn't do that. So it was good to see other fellas step up, like Lloyd, Cunningham. I guess they both got a fair bit of the ball.
Hannah's has been exceptional this year. I thought he was a bit down last year, and it really paid a bit because outside running weren't as great. But Hannah's first 3 games has been quality. Yeah, his attack into the 50, and he's actually kicking goals now. And I know that sounds a bit silly, he's kicking goals. But last year, for example, I don't feel as though, I feel like he'd just bomb it into the 50 or just not really take his opportunities and not back himself in. But this year, I just feel like he's got the perfect balance of inside and outside to his game. So I'm loving him at the moment.
And he doesn't have to worry about Crowley this week as well. So
it's actually Hanbury's performance this year was actually something I was going to bring up. each game he's played, he has been superb. First game against Essendon, 26 disposals.
Second game, Asterix.
Essendon Asterix. Second game against Port, he got 28 disposals and 2 goals, and arguably best on ground. Last weekend, 35 disposals, a goal, a couple of goal assists. And the best thing is, as we've seen with Hanbury over the years, is when he plays consecutive games, he runs himself into form. He has only really been stopped when he's gotten an injury, and it takes him a long time to find form again. If he can keep injury-free this year, he's going to have an exceptional year.
I think another thing you mentioned, Bonds, when you were saying how Luke is kind of having to deal more with a tag, it's very rare that you have the absolute quality that we have in the midfield. I think he's definitely benefiting from Luke's rise in form as well. So that's something that is really good. Can I say something that I didn't really like about the weekend, which you might not agree with?
Yeah, go for it.
I thought our defence was a little bit unorganised, actually. Like, I know that SR, SS, the Tassie Flog, whatever, he thought we played a pretty good game. Rampy played a pretty good game, but I thought that compared to the week before, he was actually not really as good. I thought that obviously we knew that not having Smith in the side was going to unsettle our back six, but definitely Rampy, I felt he's sometimes a little bit, his decision making was just a bit more pressured, and that's fair enough because Nick Smith is such a quality player. But yeah, I think it just shows how important he is to our side because we looked pretty rattled, just a bit fumbly last week.
It also doesn't help.
I would agree with that. Sorry, but yeah, I thought we lost our matchups a couple of times. Like Cameron marked a few times out in front of Rampy instead of Richards, and it was like they were disorganised, as you say. Rampy seems to have taken on that Malcheski role to get the ball in his hands, so he gets put under the pump a little bit, but he seems to lose his shit at least once a week, where he just kicks it and you're like, what the hell was that? And it ends up back there. But overall, the defence is probably, there's a few concerns there for when we do come up, against Roughhead and those sort of guys. Who's going to take them? And then Sam Reid going back there, and Laidler, I'm liking his efforts, but I'm not 100% sure how he fits in. So getting Smith back there as sort of the leader of the defence will be vital. But yeah, I think you got a valid point there with the disorganisation in defence.
It was interesting. Rampy's had a superb opening to the season, and he struggled a little bit on the weekend. But I actually felt that he may have struggled just due to the pressure of having to mark Cameron so many times. I mean, Cameron's a superb footballer, and Rampy can be a little bit of a confidence player at times. So when he was getting outmarked by Cameron on the lead and being forced to go one-on-one against him in the first quarter, I felt that may have actually damaged his confidence and could have affected his disposal later in the game.
But then the question has to be asked, why was Rampy on the number one forward?
Well, last year we threw Rampy on tools a few times and he was quite effective. He's done fantastic roles on Gunston on quite a few occasions now, and, well, Gunston isn't too dissimilar a player from Cameron. Cameron may be a bit bigger, but they're both similar leading players. So I can see a little bit of where Longmire was trying to go in that matchup early on, but it wasn't really a winning matchup.
Cameron took, 5 marks, but at least 3 of them, from memory, were right out in front where the defender couldn't really do anything. Like, he got hit lace out, so it doesn't matter who's on him if he gets 5 metres separation and they hit him on the lead straight in front. I think their forward entries are actually probably better than ours, really. I mean, we don't take many marks inside our forward line. We're behind GWS for that. So.
We only took 6 marks inside the forward line on the weekend, I think, off the top of my head.
And we're the worst side in the comp for that.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Do you have a stat handy about what it would have been against Port last week?
No, not off the top of my head.
Going into this game, we were 18th though, so it would have been shit.
So we took 8 marks inside 50 on the weekend against Port Adelaide. I can just getting it up now. 1 second.
That game against Port Adelaide, I know we're not talking about that, but we did a podcast last week. That was one of the most complete performances I've seen. It was great.
Yep.
Yeah, against Port Adelaide, we only took 4 marks inside 50.
That is really surprising, actually.
It is,
5
because
marks,
our best forward isn't he's not known for his marking.
Yeah, 5 marks.
That's true. And Buddy was playing so far, like, up the ground anyway.
5 marks inside 50 on the 2 against Port Adelaide. 3 of them to Lance Franklin. It also doesn't help that we've been using Tippett around the ground a fair bit this year and in the rucks, not just keeping him in the goal square. But he's been providing
a few marks lately.
How do you guys feel about that, Tippett in the ruck?
No,
I'm liking it.
I'm just happy he's played 3 games in a row, and the rucks are good. But no, seriously, the ruck gets him involved in the game, and I think he is a better ruckman than Pike. And then the biggest disadvantage Pike had last year by the fourth quarter, remembering even that final against Freo, he was cooked because he was rucking the whole game. So he sort of takes over in the last quarter, and I think he's a better player for that as well. I like that use of Tippett and Pike at the moment. It'll be interesting on the bigger ground against Sandal and see how they go.
I'm liking... Look, he had a quiet game this weekend, Tippett, but he was pretty good against both Port and Essendon, especially in the Essendon game. I think getting him in the ruck allows him to be used around the ground, and he may not have Franklin's mobility, but he's still a pretty mobile, tall man, and he can lay tackles. He's effective in the ruck, as Swans was mentioning before. He's got a great hit-out to advantage ratio, so... No, I like him. I'm liking him being the second ruckman or even the starting ruckman at times and using Pike in the goal square. All we really need to do in our forward 50 with either Tippett or Pike is create a contest. I'm confident that we don't necessarily need to take a heap of marks up forward in order to kick winning scores.
Yeah, because Buddy half the time wants it out in front or over the back so he can work his opponent out. He doesn't need to mark it. He's actually better kicking it on the run anyway.
And a lot of our players who can kick goals are actually very good at basically snapshots or around stoppage areas. I mean, if you look on the weekend with our goals, a lot of them were basically from crumbs.
There's 2 other players on the weekend I thought played pretty well that we haven't mentioned, and that was Kieran Jack, who I think is actually having a better season than last year. And Lewis Jetta. Actually, I think his last 2 weeks, he gets maligned on the board for being a bit soft, and his grand final was terrible, but his last 2 weeks, he looks confident and back to what we know he can do well, I think. And, when he's got his swagger, I think he's a much better player. And his inside 50s are getting better, and he's getting a bit more of it on the outside, which is what you want from him. So I think that's a good sign.
Jetta was always a very good user of the football, like skills-wise. So I'm very happy that we've decided to just stick him on half-back and just let him create and set up, because I feel like obviously in 2012 he was playing more forward, and in 13, 14 he was kind of like shifting. I felt like he didn't really have a defined role. Sometimes I'd see him hovering around the stoppage in the midfield. Sometimes you just see him everywhere. I think for him to actually like find a defined role has been very important to like understanding how he should approach a game. So I'm really happy with that coaching gem.
And he's got more depth in his kicking this year because he was kicking it short a lot all the time last year, I felt, which was infuriating, where they just bounce an inch ahead of the target and he's hitting the targets better, kicking through the ball. So that's good.
The final 2 players I did want to talk about on the weekend, the first one was Jake Lloyd. Sir Swans mentioned it beforehand, but we didn't really go into discussion. For a kid that's hasn't played more than a handful of games, 24 disposals at a 91.7% efficiency rate with a couple of clearances and a few contested disposals as well is a fantastic game. And at the moment, besides like playing for the midfield, he's almost looking like our most composed midfielder going forward, and that could even include McVeigh. He had a really good game on the weekend, and if his sub again this weekend, I won't understand the logic behind it.
I genuinely believe that he helped either completely turn the game or like partly turn the game against Asterix, because when he came on, I feel like the skills just lifted. Like, as you mentioned, what was it, 91% disposal efficiency? He actually uses the ball really, really well. And for him to start sub next week, if he does, in my opinion, it's just the wrong way to go about it, because Subiaco or Patterson's or whatever they're calling it now is such a big oval. It's like you need those players with such quality skills, and that's what you need come finals as well. So I don't want to see him play to sub, but I don't know. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. I've got no idea how Force thinks.
It's going to be, yes. And the last player I wanted to mention, just on top of it, and we haven't really touched on him this podcast, surprisingly, but besides, obviously, the Robin to our Batman and Heaney, but Franklin at the moment has started off the season really well. 5 goals, 5 this weekend. God knows how many tackles he's had against Port Adelaide and Essendon as well. He's started off the season really well, and yeah, he's running brilliantly at the moment. So, Swans, I believe you wanted to talk about Buddy earlier on?
No, Buddy's Buddy. I mean, it's baffling how he can miss some of the shots he does when he kicks those, 60 metres on the boundary on the wrong side for a left footer. He's a freak, and it's great how he started this season, especially given last year he started a bit slowly coming into the year, but it's scary. He could kick 100 goals easily this year if he. I don't know. Some people might say that's a bad thing for us if he does, but he's definitely the only one in the league capable of doing it, I think.
What I really like about how we're actually using Buddy this year is a lot more further up the field. It's just a lot more involved. And last year, the amount of times I would get so frustrated because we would kick it to Buddy in the forward line, coming on a lead, which is just not how Buddy plays. He would have about 3 defenders on him and we would still kick it to him. So for him to kind of play closer to the in between the midfield and the 50 arc, that to me is just really great because the players who play on him don't have the agility or they don't have the mobility to actually go with him fitness-wise. So I really like what they've done by shifting Buddy forward.
The delivery to him's still pretty poor, in my opinion.
But we've got Heeney now, so it's okay.
No, that's true.
Now, speaking of Heeney, we haven't discussed enough of him yet.
Well, how many score involvements? He kicked 4, and he must have set up at least 3 of Buddies.
He kicked 4 goals from 10 disposals on the weekend. He kicked 4 goals, set up 3, and another of his disposals was in a direct goal scoring chain. So from 10 disposals, 8 of them have ended out with a goal somewhere along the lines.
And the other thing is, you just got to factor in his aura. I felt like he contributed even when he was subbed out. Just his aura got us those last couple of goals to get us over the line.
And that smile on the bench just made the whole team
The way
raise.
he sat on that bench too, he looks more composed than most people on the bench. And he put that ice on exceptionally well.
Oh, with the way he sat on the bench. I felt as if most players wanted him to sit on them. But
so I think we know how Bonds feels about him.
So we've sort of talked about everyone being great, but are there any players you guys are concerned about?
I still do not. Okay, obviously you're going to talk about Reid, and that's your little pet hate. I know you have a dartboard with his face on it, so I'll let you talk about him, Sir Swans. But I cannot for the life of me figure out what's going on with Mitchell. I've thought of so many variations. I've thought of he's asked for a trade, so we're not going to play him. I've thought of, he's just in the side as insurance for when Hannah's leaves to go to Victoria. I've thought of so many different options, and I genuinely have no idea what he has to do in the reserves to actually be considered. It's just completely mind-blowing. It's not even so much that he has to come in and make an impact. Right now, I just don't even know what he needs to do to get selected. That to me is just been the mystery of 2015.
Okay, Von, who would you drop from our midfield right now? And keep in mind that Mitchell is predominantly an inside player. Who would you drop from our midfield to put him in?
For example, I know obviously we want to keep the midfield structure that we have now. Let's say when Goods put his hand down for last week or whatever, and it looked like it was going to be a wet game, I thought that, look, every single time that Mitchell has played, he has been only second to Kennedy in clearances. And I'm not saying that he has to play a game. I'm not saying he deserves a game more than our current midfielders. Right now, all I'm trying to say is that he can't even seem to be considered. And I just don't really know what the criteria. I don't know what it is that he's missing. I know what he offers, but sometimes I wonder, is say a Bird really more worthwhile than Mitchell when we get smashed in clearances week in, week out?
Well, for instance, the difference between Mitchell and Bird would be is Bird can actually do a defensive job on a player. Mitchell's never really
but
shown
so
that
can
before.
Ben McBabe. Like, he can do a defensive role on a player as well. It's like, so can Kieran Jack. He was tagging in 2013 or something, and I can't remember the last time he put a really, really heavy tag on.
Let's say we drop Bird, we use McGlynn as a tagger, and that makes us lose a little bit of run on the outside and another crumbing option up forward for another inside midfielder.
But that's okay.
Most teams, and this is including Hawthorn right now, are generally playing 2 pure inside midfielders inside a team, and then 1 or 2 that can play both roles, as an inside and an outside. Our pure inside midfielders will probably be Kennedy and Parker at the moment.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. Like, I'm saying, I don't want to mess with the midfield structure we have now. I know from just a structure perspective that Mitchell doesn't fit. Like, I understand that, but what I just don't understand is what is kind of just the bare minimum that he has to do. Because in my opinion, playing him in the reserves isn't really, what is the point in even keeping him on our list? If right now he can't break into the side with the performance he's having, then, what is...
Given that other sides are interested in him as well, and given the alleged amount of his contract, he's pretty expensive insurance policy if he's only there to be Parker and Kennedy's backup.
Well, I don't think he's predominantly there to be Parker and Kennedy's backup. I just think they want him to develop a little more versatility at the moment.
Well, if I had to play devil's advocate against Mitchell, and I'm a Mitchell fan, I think the biggest mark against him so far is he hasn't shown any ability to go forward and be rest on the half forward flank and kick goals. But I don't know if he's had the opportunity, but he had, whether we like it or not, Bird can kick a goal, McGlynn can kick a goal, Mitchell doesn't. And his disposals, he sometimes lets him down. He is an inside accumulator. He's not the quickest guy, so he hasn't shown the ability to run with anyone. So I guess maybe he's just seen as a one-trick pony, and they want him to do a bit more. But I think you could look at the 22 that played on the weekend, and just purely for talent, forget structures and everything. Mitchell is a better player than at least 8 or 9 of those people on the list right now.
That's true. Personally, I think what we've got to do with Mitchell is, and if he can get there, we'll eliminate Bird from the team. The moment Mitchell can do a defensive job on a player and accumulate disposables, similar to, let's say, what Kane Cordes would do again at Port Adelaide, when he's obviously in their team, he's getting dropped now. I think that's when he's going to have his niche in our team. We need someone that can find inside ball.
Go forward and kick goals, learn to run with people.
I think he needs to learn how to run with players.
But the issue I have with that, I completely agree with that, but we all know what the quality of the reserves are like. So that's kind of where the conundrum is. It's kind of like what we're doing with Reid. It's kind of the same question. How long can we carry a player until they learn their position or learn the skills that they need? Because I'm pretty sure that he's not going to learn the skills that you guys talked about in the needful.
Look, I think that frustrates me with Mitchell is we get to the third NAB Cup game and he's the second sub. How's he meant to do anything if he doesn't get a chance? His last game he played, he was actually arguably our best or second best player. I think he's done everything. Other people get chances and chances. I'm sick of hearing, I'm not going to go on about Reid, but I'm sick of hearing he's going to be this great swing man and he's tall and he's almost up to 100 games of chances. Mitchell hasn't had the opportunities that other people have, and it's just that's what frustrates me. And then when there's a late out, McGlynn can jump back in without his fitness, but we don't consider Mitchell. He's not even an emergency. It's a bit weird when you could have traded him to Carlton for something else. If you don't want him, get rid of him and let's cash in while he's worth something instead of running his trade value into the ground. It's just perplexing to me. He should be in the side.
For me, he's too good to be traded. I keep saying let's use him as trade bait, but let's just say, I don't know why I'm going with the Hannahs going back to Victoria. It's just always a gut feeling I've always had. Let's just say that one of our midfielders decide to leave, which isn't impossible considering salary cap and all of that jazz. So to me, he's obviously not the same outside ability as Hannahs, but he's better than every other midfielder we have playing in the reserves. So it's just baffling that I understand, like, it's for structural reasons that we keep Sam Reid in the team, and I'm not suggesting that we drop him for Mitchell, but it's just baffling that players like Reid can get a game while a player like Mitchell is trying to learn skills which I don't think he can learn in the reserves.
I think I know I'll be out down, but I would just pick the best team, and I would drop Reid this week, and I'd pick Tom Mitchell because he's a better player. And Reid is tall, but if we want a tall backman, just pick Naismith, and he can jump up in the back line because Reid doesn't stop anyone, he doesn't play on anyone, and his disposal is terrible. He can go piss off to the knee and learn to play because we can't carry him against Hawthorn and those sort of teams because we're just going to get our asses kicked again.
We're probably going to need Reid this weekend, though, against Fremantle.
I bet he doesn't play on anyone or stop one tall player taking a mark. People tell me every week he's tall and going to stop people, but he half the time he's in the goal square as a goalkeeper. I could do that. Well,
but are you 2.05 centimetres tall?
No.
Metres.
Reid's not. He's 194 centimetres.
Same thing.
No, it's not. It's 8 centimetres shorter. Well, if you just want a tall guy, pick a ruckman and chuck him back there, or pick bloody anyone. I was going to say Aaliyah, but he's injured, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I pick the best team and work around it. There's no good having a defender who actually turns it over and costs us more.
For our game, and we may as well move on to a preview of us versus the Dockers this weekend. Who would you drop and bring in this weekend? Keep in mind that we've had a few late withdrawals as well recently.
Well, Nick Smith has to come back in if he's fit.
Yeah.
Adam Goods, I wouldn't have picked him for the Subiaco game anyway, so he's not coming in. So I've got Smith in. I would drop Reid, but that's not going to happen. So I'll say Smith will come in, and I suspect they'll drop probably Towers or Laidler unfairly because I don't think they'll drop McGlynn. That's who. If I was bringing Smith in, I'd probably put McGlynn back for another week, but he didn't really do anything wrong. Yeah, but Smith, you got to have Smith.
Okay, Von, your ins and outs for this weekend?
Yeah, well, obviously if Smith's fit, he comes straight back in. There's no question about that. Yeah, look, Towers was obviously sub last week, and usually we make the sub strategically. That's a lie. We never make it strategically. But it's pretty obvious where he stands with the coaching panel if they decide to make him sub, considering that the other option was to, sub a guy who's played one NAB game or something, if that, in Benny, and start him over starting Towers. So that to me shows where he's at with the coaches. So obviously, yeah, in Smith, out Towers. I know they're not that like for like, but, it doesn't really matter. I don't think we can really afford Reid because unfortunately he is tall. And unfortunately Fremantle are tall. So, yeah.
I think if the ball gets down there that much that their second resting ruckman in Clark or Sandilands is getting that much of the ball, then it won't matter who's in there. I think we've got to win it in the midfield at Subi and control the game. Towers is unlucky, though, because I like the Towers Rowan set up in the forward line with Buddy and Tippett against Port. But, yeah, I can see where people are coming from with suggesting he'll go, given McGlynn and Cunningham both jumped ahead of him last week, and Cunningham's probably the heel matchup, I guess.
Yeah, Cunningham took Hill last year, so I think he'll probably go there. It'll be interesting.
What about Fife? What do we do with Fife? Try and tag him or just head-to-head?
Just give him his 39 to 40 posies is probably Longwire's usual strategy, isn't it?
I think they'll send Bird to him.
You think we'll try and tag? I think we'll try and head. Yeah, I reckon they'll put Luke on him.
Luke Parker?
Yeah, just try and smash him.
I think even with the form that Fife is in at the moment, it'll be a rotating job, but you have to have someone with him at stoppages, and that'll probably be Bird.
Bird's a bit
too slow.
Yeah,
he's in there as this tagger, but he won't take the best player.
You know what? I almost just kind of say, Fife, you do whatever you want to do for this whole game. We're going to focus on all of your other midfielders. Because
Right now, I talked over you. Right now, Fife is the best player in the competition on form, in my opinion, but his disposal by foot can let him down. So let him have 40 and just try to cut off the impact that those 35
Did you guys
40 have.
see, what would you guys do with Lachie Neale? His game against, and it was only against West Coast today, was crazy good. 42 disposals at a 95% efficiency rate with
You just
3
answered your own
goals.
question. It was against the Eagles, so
He's been good all year though.
We've got to win the clearances and focus on what we can do. You can't shut everyone down. And taggers are a dying art. I think it's more at the head-to-head at the stoppages. You pick a man and you go hard at people, but it's a team effort. You got to just get first hands to the ball and kick to your own advantage. You move it quickly. No pissy kicks outside 50 like we did during the Giants game. I mean, it doesn't punish you as much as it does at the smaller ground, but just get the ball down there long and run. They've got a lot of pace. It's going to be a hard game to win.
Yeah, it's going to be, especially over there, but we haven't done too badly at Subiaco over the last few years, besides one final with less than half our team.
But if a Freo fan was here, they'd tell you apart from that final, we haven't played them since 2010 at Patterson's or Domain or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, that's true. How do you guys
we actually haven't mentioned at all that I'm probably a bit concerned about this week is Ted Richards. And potentially if he goes to Pavlich or something like that, that could be he might be hard to stop, even though he's getting on in years.
Pavlich isn't the player he was. He's still a damn good footballer, but he's lost a yard or two at his pace as well as Richards.
Pavlich hasn't always been incredible against us. Like I've seen some of his other games, and he absolutely tears teams apart. But I think that Richards has enough of his measure for it not to be an issue.
I think Richards has lost the yard. I think he might struggle to play beyond this year.
I don't think Richards has been too bad.
No, I've liked him so far this year.
Yeah, but I think Grundy's taken over as the key defender down there. And Richards which Richards shouldn't have to do. He's still fine, but I wouldn't want to see him. I'm worried about the round 8 game with that defensive setup.
You guys might shoot me down for this a little bit and a few people on the board, but right now I think Grundy's probably the most underrated player in our team.
There's only one flog on our board who underrates Grundy, and we all know who he is. And he's too wussy to turn up and say anything. Since Grundy became elite, we haven't seen much of him, have we?
No, and that he might have 1 or 2 clangers every couple of weeks, but he does a job.
He goes where angels dare to tread. That's going to happen.
He does a job every weekend, and we don't really complain about who he's on. They never really tear us apart. He just does what needs to be done.
Was that a little shout out to Port? Never tear us apart?
Yeah.
You know what we haven't talked about for 10 minutes, and that's Issac Heeney.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was actually thinking that Heeney is probably our best key position defender. Like, I know that you mentioned Grundy, and I know that you mentioned Richards, but I'm pretty sure that with the mark that Issac Heeney has, I think he could be AA back line. Easy.
Well, that being said, we don't want to take out an all-Australian half-forward flank centre-half forward from our forward line. You take a top 5 forward over a top 5 backman any day, and Heaney's a top 5 forward right now.
That or you put him in the ruck. He's
top
so
5?
versatile.
Who are the 4 ahead of him? Jeez.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
What did we lose the grand final by? 74 points or something? I think if Heeney played, we would have won by 110.
740 points.
At least.
Like, in all honesty, on the weekend, out of our total score of 111 points, I think Heeney was probably worth only 100 of them.
I think he actually kicked 200 by himself, and the AFL and Eddie just got really mad, and they instructed the umpires to take away about 99 of it. So.
Really? I thought just the goal umpires were just too mesmerised by his incredible arms to note down all the scores.
Just set the tone for the whole day.
That banner just stood no chance.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, what are your tips for this weekend against Fremantle?
Okay, I'll start.
You go.
I've never really rated Fremantle. I know that's very weird considering they just was 60 to 4 against West Coast. But something about that team and how they match up on us, how we match up on them, something about Ross Lyon. I don't know. Their team just bores me half to death. I think we'll win by about 24 points, not goals. But if Issac Heeney plays, maybe 24 goals. I don't really know.
Okay, Swans rule?
We probably haven't really shown Freo much respect in the podcast, I guess, because they've got some quality players. Fife's one of the best in the comp, and they've got Barlow and a few others in the midfield. I'm a bit with Von. I find them a very boring side to watch. And I know what the response would be if you said that on the main board, like who's the most boring team or whatever. But Ross Lyon is the most boring coach. I don't think he's going to win a flag with that side. But having said that, the Dockers at home with their hard pressure, I think they're the favourites for the game. I wouldn't be surprised if they won by a couple of goals.
But Heeney's playing.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be about 80 points. No, look, my head says Freo, my heart says Sydney. I don't know. I think if we win this, I think we'll win the premiership probably.
Confident call early in the year.
It's a danger game. Yeah, sorry. I shouldn't drink before the podcast, but I think I think we can win. I don't know. I want to see the teams. I just think we might bugger it up at selection.
Yeah, that's what I'm really worried about as well. If we bring in like Goods and keep Reed in and like don't have Smith, and I don't know if Longmire just goes crazy, I think that we stand no real chance. But we just match up so well on them.
We do, yeah, we do. I just think round one we were pitiful. Let's face it. Round two was exceptional. If we play like that round two, we'll beat anyone. And then on the weekend, we sort of just did what we had to do, which is what good sides do. So the form's there, and it'll be an interesting game. But I kind of feel like I don't watch Freo closely enough to make a decent judgment, which is a bit silly to say. But yeah, they're a very hard team to watch.
Their performance this week, what do you attribute? I can't say that word. What do you attribute? Oh my God, I can't say that word. Attribute.
Their midfield.
No, but I was going to say, do you really think that they are a 60-4 better side than West Coast, or do you think that West Coast injuries played a massive? Plus, it was the derby. Derby, whatever they call it.
West Coast were off the boil earlier on, but the game wasn't. I don't think if West Coast had all their defenders in, it would have made a massive difference early in the game. Fremantle's midfield was scary. Like, you look, they had 44 clearances to 26, and a lot of West Coast clearances were in junk time in the last quarter.
West Coast clearances has always been appalling, though.
Yeah, but their midfield isn't
game.
bad.
I mean, we only beat the Giants by 21 points, if you want to go down that path.
That's true, but it's just I'm reading a lot on Big Footy about how, after that performance, they're flag favourites, and I don't know how much of that is Fremantle being that good and how much of that is...
Look at this for a midfield. You've got Nate Fife, who's probably the best player in the league right now. Lachie Neale, who I touched on earlier in the podcast, is severely underrated on Big Footy and elsewhere. His performance on the weekend was one of the best performances I've seen by a midfielder in recent years. You've got David Mundy, who's now starting to run for the midfield again a bit more and seems to be a fair bit fitter than he was last year. Subin, who's moving up the ground a little bit and got 5 clearances on the weekend. Daniel Pearce is an outside runner. We're forgetting Barlow, who'd probably be like 4th or 5th midfielder down. Hill as an outside runner. Yeah.
But you name all of those players, right? And I know that a few of them have changed their roles a little bit, but how is that team any different to the one that we beat convincingly in the qualifying final last year? That's just where it is for me.
Makes a big difference, though. That Patterson Stadium.
We play Patterson's pretty well.
Yeah, okay. If you want the main difference between them last year and them this year, they're fit. Last year, Nate Fife had several injuries throughout the year and missed games and had his build-up destroyed by suspensions. Lachie Neale had several injuries during last year and is now fit. Barlow's got game time under his belt at the moment, isn't coming off breaks and seems to be running out matches fine. David Mundy's fit as well. You've got Sandilands, who's always going to really give you what you'd really expect, but his hit-out seems to have gone to another level this year. Their midfield is terrifying. I'm not overly worried about their forward line. Pavlich, I think, is a little bit, is getting on. He's still a great player, and you can never underestimate a champion, but he's getting on a little bit, and Ballantyne's always hard to really worry about, but I believe he's suspended this weekend.
He's out.
He's out this weekend, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. Yeah,
So if we're not worried about the forward line, why are we worried about picking a certain someone?
look, I'm more worried about the midfield matchups this week. I think
I agree.
if we're going to beat Fremantle, we've got to match them in the 4 to 50. I think we've got them covered in defence and in the forward line, but their midfield terrifies me. That being said, I am going to tip us by 2 goals. And then when you add in the Heeney effect, 36 points. It'll be a bit more, but we're going to get too distracted and not notice a few scores.
Well, I'm just glad that you're not the goal umpire.
I think the pressure's on them. They're meant to be this great side. Then they're at home. Early in the year, as you said, fully fit. Come on, beat us. Show us what you're made of. I think we're easy into the season. We're built for September. They're built for April. They might win this, but we'll win ultimately. Ultimately, we're a better side. But, yeah, they can have a Anzac Day win, perhaps, but we'll see. Our best, if we play like we did against Port, they won't touch us. If we play like we did against Essendon, it'll get ugly.
Okay, thanks for the final words, Swans Rule. Just right before we finish this up, Heeney prediction, Von, this week. How many disposals in goals?
How many disposals?
Yep, to Heeney.
That's a new. Oh, right, to Heeney. I thought you meant for the team. I was like, wow, that's
no, our new segment for the podcast, Heeney prediction.
Okay. Heeney is going to kick. I think they're going to put a really hard tag on him. Oh wait, Crowley's. I started. Okay. I think Heeney's going to get maybe only 21 brilliant touches though at 100% efficiency. Okay, maybe like 95 to be realistic. And he's going to kick 2 goals.
Yeah. Swans?
I think Heeney will get 12 disposals, and I think he will kick 5 goals.
Does he get injured or something? Why 12 disposals?
He'll sub off a quarter time after, because he'll just go, that's enough, we've won. And he'll catch the early plane back to Sydney because he's that confident that he's done his job.
And with a quick drop in Collingwood to say hi to Eddie.
Yep. I think he'll get the Rising Star this week too, by the way.
I think it's a bit unfair to have him eligible for the Rising Star this year. He's too good.
You can't win the Rising Star and the Brownlow.
Yeah.
That's just a bit unfair.
A little unfair on the competition.
What about you, Bonds?
Heeney prediction, 24 disposals, 3 goals, but 6 goal assists. He's going to share the load this weekend.
And, okay, how many people do you think he's going to get sexually aroused?
How many can Patterson Stadium fill up? 44,000?
40.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Swans Bigfooty Podcast. My name is Bonds. Today I've been joined by Von and Swans Rule. Thank you and good night.